What's going on, Falcons fans? Logan here. Welcome back to Rise Up Rundown, and if you're new here, welcome. Alright, so for this video, we're actually going to go over the questions that I got for this week, and if I missed any, by the way, I apologize in advance. These are the questions that I received before I started recording, and we're going to go over the questions that I weirdly missed for last week. That was really weird. I know I screenshotted and sent to my iPad the questions from last week, and some of them just didn't go through, and I missed some. So that was weird, and I apologize about that. So we're just going to go over the questions that I missed from last week eventually. And the only other thing that I wanted to say before we get started is there will not be a mailbag questions video next week. No huge particular reason. I think I'm just going to take a bit of a break from the mailbag questions and just take a bit of a week off, just, reset, recharge a little bit, and then we will continue the mailbag questions the week after that. Now, the shorts are still going to be coming out, and if there's any big Falcons news that comes out for next week, I will also upload my thoughts on that. But for mailbag questions, I think I'll take a week off and then it'll come back next week. But with all that being said, let's get straight into it. So starting with the questions that I got for this week, that one Falcons fan for life asked, should we trade for Mike Evans from the Succaneers? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I don't really think the Bucs would want to give us Mike Evans. And people might say, oh, well, Julio Jones is on the Bucs, but that wasn't, we didn't trade Julio to the Bucs. Julio, was he a free agent when he went to the Bucs, or did the Titans trade him? I can't really remember what happened, but either way, he was not on the Falcons. Would the Bucs be willing to trade Mike Evans away? I mean, probably not. I can't imagine they would actually want to give him to us. But if we somehow were able to, sure. The only reason I'm not super big on that is because I just don't really think it's gonna happen. But if we're able to, sure. He's been a good player for a very long time, be a good mentor for our young players and a good player to help develop Ritter. He knows the Bucs pretty well, and the whole NFC South, so he could hopefully shred apart the NFC South if we got him. But sure, but I wouldn't really count on getting him. That one Falcons fan for life asked, which non-divisional opponent are you most or least excited to face this season? Most excited will go to the Jaguars. That looks like it's maybe our biggest test for this year. Going to London and facing what should be a playoff team in the Jacksonville Jaguars. And we usually play pretty well against the Jaguars, but I do want to see how we play when they're a much better team. And then the least excited I am for an opponent that we're facing, I don't think I'm excited to play the Cardinals. We always beat the Cardinals, to be honest with you. We always do. And it doesn't really look like the Cardinals are going to be a great team this year. So I guess my least excited would be the Cardinals. Tara Turner asked, how many rushing yards do you think Desmond Ritter will have this upcoming season? Will he run more than pass, or will he be about 50-50? Hashtag rise up. I think 50-50. I know I keep saying this in every video I make, but I think the passing statistics are going to look a lot worse than it actually is, only because I think the offense throughout the majority of 2023 is going to be through running the ball. How many rushing yards is he going to get? Probably not that much. I imagine they're going to use, Tyler Algier and Bijan and Cordero Patterson to run the ball more than Desmond Ritter, but I do think Desmond Ritter could get 500 yards for the season. Archangel asks, what can we expect from Grant this year, working with Bates and Coach Gray? One of the best secondary coaches in the NFL, if not the best. To be honest with you, I think people are kind of sleeping on Richie Grant. I honestly think Richie Grant could be a surprise player for this year. He's got that coach to work with that you mentioned, and then also Jesse Bates right alongside him. And I think he knows how big of a year this is. He knows that he doesn't want to be replaced like Jalen Hawkins did, so he's kind of like, okay, I was a second-round pick, let's not get replaced. So I do think that Jalen Hawkins, or Richie Grant could have a bounce-back year. That one Falcons fan for life asks, do you see us wearing our alternate jerseys, throwbacks or gradients in the playoffs? Assuming we make it, that is, no. And that's a shame, but I just don't think they will. I honestly think that they're simply just going to stick to their original jerseys, which is fine, but, you know, their gradients and throwback jerseys, in my opinion, are better than their all blacks. I know I said this not long ago, but I'm not the biggest fan of the all black jerseys, but I imagine that's what they're going to wear when they make the playoffs. And I don't think that this Falcons team is a playoff team to where they can win one in 2023. I think they can maybe host one if they win the division, or maybe sneak in like a 6th or 7th seed wild card spot. Therefore, they would wear like their white jerseys, or maybe their black jerseys, depending on if whoever they're playing, maybe like the Cowboys or whatever, is wearing white jerseys. But I don't know. Either way, I don't really think that they would be wearing anything else other than that. Archangel asks, out of all the tight ends that ever played the game in the NFL, who would you compare Kyle Pitts to the most? All right, you know what's awesome about this question is I remember when we got Kyle Pitts, I said on Twitter and in a couple of my videos, I know this isn't a tight end I'm comparing him to, but I always said that Kyle Pitts is just Megatron, but as a tight end. Seriously. That was always my comparison for Kyle Pitts. I always said that he was simply just Calvin Johnson, but as a tight end. And now that they're moving him possibly to receiver, I think it maybe even looks a little more accurate that he's literally just Calvin Johnson. That is my realistic comparison for Kyle Pitts. Like, literally, what does Kyle Pitts do that isn't elite? You know? Maybe run blocking, but everything else, I think he's got, you know, pretty good route running. Obviously, he's got great hands. Obviously, he's got the speed. Like, I mean, I think he's Calvin Johnson, if I'm being honest. But what tight end would I compare him to? I don't know if any of them really match him, because Kyle Pitts doesn't really even play like a tight end. He more plays like he's a receiver. Honestly, I think I'll stick with that. I think I'll stick with him being Megatron, because I think Kyle Pitts more plays like a receiver than he does a tight end. And yeah, you know, he's listed as tight end, and he'll probably still play a little bit of tight end, but we'll see. Kingspur 3535 asks, who's someone you think could break out that isn't much of a starter? And whatever happened to Jared Barnhart, honestly, as far as whatever happened to Jared Barnhart, I don't really know. That's just a little unfortunate. So not really sure what happened there. But who's a player that doesn't really start that can maybe break out? I guess I'd maybe be like on the lookout for like either Eddie Goldman, because I don't think he's gonna start necessarily. I think they're just gonna like rotate him around. But you know, he is a player that had to take a break from the NFL for a little bit, and he decided to come back. Maybe there's something he realized he can do, and he's like, I want to show off how I was in my prime, and hopefully he can still play, is all I'm really trying to get at. Or maybe Matt Hennessy. Maybe Matthew Bergeron's not the best tackle, and then they bring in Matt Hennessy to be guard, and he wasn't like the best guard ever last year, but he really wasn't that bad either. Better than Jalen Mayfield, so, those are the two players I can think of. Archangel asks, out of all the QBs that ever played in the NFL, including this year, who would you compare Desmond Ridder to? I think I would probably compare him to... I'll have to go with... who would I compare him to? You're hoping he can at least be a Dak Prescott, right? Because, I don't think Desmond Ridder... This is just my opinion, but I don't think Desmond Ridder will ever be truly elite. I think he's just probably going to be good enough for the Falcons to keep him as a starter, and I think he can do some nice things as a quarterback. That's how I view Dak Prescott. In my opinion, I don't think Dak Prescott is some truly elite quarterback for the Cowboys. I think he's simply just good enough that if you build a team around him, he can win you a Super Bowl. And that's how I think Desmond Ridder is going to be. It's just my honest thoughts. I think he can be good enough to build a team around and win you a Super Bowl, but probably never going to be a truly elite guy. That's just my opinion, but I guess I would compare him to Dak Prescott. Archangel asks, how many of our defensive players will have 7 or 8 or more sacks this year? And name who you think that or those players will it be. I always thought that maybe Arnold Ebiketie would probably be the one with the most sacks, only because I just really believe in him. I can really see him having a 7 or 8 sack season. I can maybe see Grady Jarrett bouncing back now that he's not double teamed. And every other player, I don't know if they'll get around those sacks. But because, I don't know if Calais Campbell's going to get all those sacks, only because, he hasn't quite been the same player he once was. I like Bud Dupree and, I like David Onyemata. Maybe he could get close, but I imagine he'll get more like 5 sacks this year. So if I had to see anyone getting like 7 or 8 sacks, I think it'd be Grady Jarrett and Arnold Ebiketie. Have you ever thought about selling Rise Up Rundown gear, coffee mugs, hoodies, t-shirts, and accessories like Out of Your Falcon Mind to help promote your brand? Shout outs to them, by the way. And yeah, by the way, shout out to Out of Your Falcon Mind. They're still absolutely killing it this offseason, and they're still a very fun channel to watch. I think you guys are starting to get very familiar with them, which I'm happy with. But if you have not checked out of Your Falcon Mind podcast, please do. They're an amazing Falcons content channel. And as far as have I ever thought about it, did you know there was an attempt to even do that in the first place last year? Last year, I actually was working on that. But sadly, I just, I couldn't really get things going. But yes, there actually was an attempt to make Rise Up Rundown shirts and hoodies. And I don't think I had anything else going at the moment. I thought about hats, but yeah, so far at the moment it was only hoodies and like, cups and, coffee mugs, whatever. But I couldn't really get many things going. So, I'm basically saying that I am interested, but I have not actually gotten anything going. Archangel asks, who will be our best linebacker this year? It's got to be Caden Ellis, right? It's got to be. The revenge factor after being traded, I think, is going to be very high. And he's a pretty good linebacker anyway. Like, I like Michael Walker, but I don't think he's going to be our best linebacker. I think Troy Anderson is just going to have to develop a little more before we would consider him our best linebacker. So I think that one's got to go to Caden Ellis. Archangel asks, who is your favorite player outside of the usual suspects like Cordero, Pitts, Bijan, Algier, Drake, Bates, AJ Terrell, and Grady Jarrett? I think I'll still have to go with Calais Campbell. I've always been a big Calais Campbell guy. When he was in his prime, I wanted him to win a Super Bowl so bad. He was so fun to watch play, and he was a great mentor. No, he's not quite who he once was. But we're still happy to have him, and hopefully we can win a Super Bowl with him. But I would say Calais Campbell. That one Falcons fan for life asks, will Kaden Elliss have a double-digit sack season? As great as that would be, I don't think he will. But I do still think he's going to have a great season. So just because I don't think he'll get double-digit sacks doesn't necessarily mean that I think he's going to have a bad season. I think he's actually going to be pretty good. But how many sacks will he get? I imagine more like 5 or 6 maybe. Because, I mean, I think, Ryan Nielsen can do some things with him. I just don't expect too many sacks yet. But he should be fine. Archangel asks, who will have the most touchdowns this year out of Drake London, Pitts, and Bijan? In order of 1 through 3, I think Bijan should probably get the most touchdowns here. I imagine they're super excited for a guy that's already getting Hall of Fame comps, which I think is a little too early for a rookie, but whatever. And I imagine that they're going to be running the ball throughout the majority of their offense, so I think Bijan should be number 1. I got Drake London as number 2. I think Drake London will be number 2, but not by much, because I think Kyle Pitts will have a bounce back year in 2023, now that he's being moved to possibly wide receiver. And, hopefully there's better quarterback play and he can get more scores. Hopefully he can get at least like 5 or so, but maybe Drake London gets like 7. I don't know. But I honestly think that Bijan's going to get like 12 or so, because I just think that we're going to be rushing the ball throughout the majority of the season. Archangel asks, what can we expect from my birthday twin, Akuda, working with AJ Terrell and Coach Gray? You know what? I don't think that the hype should be too high for Akuda, but I think it should be fairly high. Do I think that Jeff Okudah is going to be one of the greatest Falcons to ever play? Not really. But at the very best, he could be kind of similar to maybe Isaiah Oliver and Robert Alford. Like, they never were like star players for us, but as time went by, they were pretty fine players for us, right? Like, we think that if they were on this Falcons team now, you hope that they're not your number 1 corner, but like as a number 2 corner, you're pretty okay with that. And I think Jeff Okudah could be a good number 2 corner. I don't think he's ever going to be a number 1, but as a number 2, I think you're fine with that. Archangel asks, out of all the linebackers that ever played the game, who would you compare Arnold Ebiketie, AK-47 to? I think at the very best, he could maybe be prime Jadeveon Clowney, and he kind of gets a lot of hate, to be honest with you. A lot of people don't like Jadeveon Clowney because, he was a first overall pick, and, he didn't really live up to those expectations. But he wasn't, bad either. He was still decent. And with the Texans, he was a pretty good number 2, pass rusher. Obviously, J.J. Watt was their number 1 defensive line guy. But Jadeveon Clowney was still a pretty good pass rusher, at least at one point. And I think that's what Arnold Ebiketie could be. I don't think he's ever going to be a number 1. I'll be honest. I just don't. I don't think he's ever going to be this elite pass rusher. But he could be a good number 2 guy that could rush the passer. Archangel asks, who's the most valuable player on our team, non-quarterback? Jesse Bates comes to mind, AJ Terrell comes to mind, Bijan comes to mind, and Kyle Pitts comes to mind. Of all those 4 players, I'm going to have to go Jesse Bates. I think he's the only player on our team that you can confidently say he's the best of something he does. He's the best safety in the league. I think everyone can agree he probably is the best safety. AJ Terrell, you might have some people arguing on if he's the best corner. He's certainly close. Kyle Pitts, you could argue on if he's the best tight end we have. Bijan, I think he's going to play well enough to where you could argue he's the best running back. But I think Jesse Bates, no one's in debate there. I think everyone knows he's the best. That one Falcons fan for life asks, is Drake London bound for a breakout season? Absolutely. I think he should be their number one wide receiver. And he's, to be honest with you, the only receiver that I truly believe in. Like Matt Collins and Scotty Miller, I think will be fine, but I don't think that Desmond Ridder will throw it to them too much. So I imagine Drake London will have an 1,000-yard season and get around 6 touchdowns, probably somewhere around there, which I think is still a pretty good season. That one Falcons fan for life asks, is Kyle Pitts being hated on too much? Yes, and that's weird. People are saying he's a bust, literally out of nowhere. I don't know why. He literally had an 1,000-yard season in his rookie year. And then when he gets injured, and there's literally a highlight reel, well, not really a highlight reel, but a low light reel of Marcus Mariota overthrowing Kyle Pitts. And if he had it, he probably would have had 1,000 yards for the season. People all of a sudden say he's a bust. It's weird. So hopefully Kyle Pitts can turn things around. I think he's the player that I'm rooting for the most this year because it's weird that people are hating him. So that's weird. I don't know where that came from, but hopefully things can change. All right, now for the questions that I missed in last week's Mailbag Questions video. Archangel asked, out of all the teams we're playing this year, which team scares you the most? Besides the Jaguars and Detroit, because I think those are probably our two hardest opponents, and maybe the Vikings. I know the Vikings aren't trending in the best direction, but I think they still are a threat nonetheless. I would be scared of the Panthers. I think Bryce Young can be a very good quarterback this year. And maybe that's it. I would just say the Jaguars, Detroit, and the Panthers are probably the scariest teams we're facing this year. That one Falcons fan for life asks, who are you most excited to see on the field? I don't know. It's a tie between Bijan and Jesse Bates. I was super excited for Jesse Bates when we got him. And I know he's going to do well because he's a proven NFL player. But I'm also excited to see Bijan play because, well, obviously he was a first-round pick. And people are already saying he'll go to the Hall of Fame. So we'll see. But it's a tie between those two. Archangel asks, which rookie will have the best season this year outside of Bijan? I will have to go with Clark Phillips. I think Clark Phillips should have an amazing rookie year, surrounded with great talent around him, and he was actually a good player that I guess I just slept on in the draft. Like, I didn't really know too much about Clark Phillips when we drafted him, and then I was like, okay, he's getting hyped up by Falcons fans. Let's check out what this guy has, and I'm impressed, to say the least. He looks awesome, and I can't wait to see him play. Archangel asks, out of the last 3 years of draft picks in the first round, which one would you change? And with 2 players, meaning drop 1 player and pick up to 1 player from one of the last 3 years in the first round. Be honest. Okay, I like this question. Now I'll be honest. There's not really a lot of players from the later rounds of the draft in recent years that I can remember. So, I know it would sound easy if I said we shouldn't have gotten Jalen Mayfield and we should have gotten someone else, but I honestly can't really remember most of the prospects from, the later rounds of the draft. So if I have to pick one from early on, I remember it's funny when I said that we should have taken Trevon Diggs over AJ Terrell. No, we should not have taken Trevon Diggs over AJ Terrell. One that I wouldn't I wouldn't do it too much. I'm okay with the player we got. But I'll also be honest, I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. Part of the reason I didn't like the Drake London pick is because I thought Garrett Wilson was a much better receiver. And even though this is no disrespect to Drake London, I literally just said that he can have an 1,000-yard season and 6 touchdowns. If I'm being brutally honest, I do think that Garrett Wilson's going to end up being the better receiver because of his quarterback, is what I was going to say. And then, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to develop him a lot. And I think that Garrett Wilson with a great quarterback, and honestly, he played better anyway without Aaron Rodgers than Drake London, if I'm being honest. I do think that I would take Garrett Wilson over Drake London. I'm kind of just saying it as it is. But I'm also not saying that I'm mad we have Drake London. I think Drake London is going to be an amazing player. And, he's going to be one of the best receivers to be from that draft class. So, no disrespect to Drake London. I'm still very happy we have him. I'm just saying I think I would take Garrett Wilson. But I like Drake London. Archangel asks, which team is the Atlanta Falcons' biggest rivals outside of the NFC South? Times have changed. I would have said in years past, like it's like the Eagles maybe, or maybe, the Packers. But times have changed. We haven't really played any non-NFC South rival and we started to hate them so much. But I think I'll have to go with probably the Patriots. I don't think the Falcons like the Patriots, despite the fact that there is not many players from that Super Bowl squad that we have now. But I don't really think that the Falcons like the Patriots, so I imagine that the Patriots are probably a hated team for the Falcons. Archangel asks, will Desmond Ridder be our QB in 5 years? Only time will tell. Only time will tell. I don't exactly know how confident I feel that he'll be our quarterback in the next 5 years. To me, that kind of just depends on how he's going to play in 2024, more than I say in 2023. Desmond Ridder at best could maybe be like a quarterback that, let's be honest, could possibly be carried by this running game to go to the playoffs in 2023. And then if he doesn't show too much in 2024, then maybe you go ahead and get a quarterback. Or maybe if he looks so bad in 2023, you go and get a quarterback in next year's draft. But maybe he does show flashes and maybe he does develop really well. Maybe he is at least like Dak Prescott. And then I would say that he would be here for the next 5 years. But how confident do I feel in that? Not very high, only because honestly, I just don't know. I think time will tell. The sky's the limit for Desmond Ridder. Archangel asks, is AJ Terrell a top 10 cornerback? I think he's like a top 3 cornerback is how highly I think of him. People are going to forget that because of his down year last year. But let's not forget that the year before, he was argued to be the number 1 corner in the league over Jalen Ramsey. I think he can bounce back now that he's got better talent around him and a better coach. And I just believe he's a player to bounce back anyway because he's a great player. So I honestly think like top 5 could be the very least. He could be in top 3s, like where he'll probably be in the season, but I would not be shocked if he ends up number 1. I sound biased as hell, but I wouldn't be surprised. And then the last one is Archangel asking, to which team is the Atlanta Falcons of the AFC? Man, that's tough because a lot of AFC teams are so good this year. But if I had to choose one, let's see. I'll go with the Colts, because they have a great running game, right? Jonathan Taylor is basically their Bijan Robinson. Anthony Richardson is an unproven quarterback, just like Desmond Ridder. They have some pretty good players on defense, and their receivers aren't great, but they're not bad. So I'll have to say the Indianapolis Colts. But those are my answers to all of those amazing questions that I thank each and every one of you for. I love and appreciate you all for the support, sincerely. And I will see you guys, not next week, but the week after, with some more mailbag questions videos. And as always, rise up.